4,
So-
3, 2. Sorry?
Are we watching the camera?
Oh,
Watching to the
we're
side?
interacting with each other.
We're interacting with each,
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah. we're
Okay.
interacting
I know,
with each
okay.
I know, I know.
I'm going to.
other. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean,
I
particularly
gotta
like each other.
squeeze around so I can actually see you.
Well,
Okay, great. And action.
Maestro, if we can call you that, to just shake things up right from the very beginning. Our project involves what we're calling now the Fallen 66. It has to do with those Tuskegee Airmen pilots that were killed. We now find that that we might have our numbers wrong, that there might be many others, and there are some crew people that are involved. But we feel that families have not gotten closure. Those of us who don't know that they died need to understand it.
Right.
And that's the case in any war. There's no two ways about that. But through your efforts and the efforts of a lot of other people, the Tuskegee Airmen in the last 20 years have become more known. I had a conversation with some of the older airmen and asked that specific question, and they are proud of the fact that in this last couple of decades, it's been more pronounced. What are your thoughts about the Fallen 66?
Well, I mean, it's a fact of war that some men go missing. And that's worse, actually, than getting the telegram that says, you know, your son or daughter or father have, fallen in service of the country. Because it leaves this aching feeling of not knowing what happened. And so I think it's very important to try to resolve that issue. And obviously we've been struggling through all the wars, excuse me. Obviously we've been struggling through all the wars since World War II to try to identify as many of the missing as possible in terms of the efforts of the country to spend a great deal of time and energy to do that. I think it's the same thing whenever you get an advocacy group, like what you're talking about. It always helps a lot in terms of getting, the Department of Defense or whoever you're dealing with to sort of pay attention. And so I think it's a good idea. Also, you can spread the word, get contacts, and have more influence over people who might know things.
Well, isn't it interesting, though, how media, television, film, can aid in starting movements? I'm thinking back some 30 years ago to Roots and the big movement, a huge movement that started in people. And it had nothing to do, in a lot of people's minds, with what Roots was about, other than the core thing, which was the ability some kind of way, or the need, desire to find out where in the world you came from.
Right.
And so some kind of way, through an effort that we assume is going to be enormous with the archivists and Dr. Ruth Jackson. I don't know if you've met her. And the stuff at the DOD, that we can begin to ask questions that make sense, make connections that make sense, and out of all of that, come up with some answers and feel better about the process. How do you feel about your part in media building that makes a lot of these things happen? Are you aware of that?
Well, I am. I mean, one of the reasons I did the film was to give young people today a sense of their own history, which a history that, when you really get down to it, they don't really have much available to them in the media.
Right.
And and again, the problem is the people who become part of, say, Black history are the exceptional ones. The Martin Luther Kings, the Douglases, the people, people who are way above everybody else. And I wanted to make a movie about just regular guys, regular people, like everybody else, just like the rest of us, and teenagers, 19, 20, 22 years old, kids who went out and became heroes and helped save the country from a very horrible fate. That anybody can be a hero. Anybody who's part of this culture of ours can help make it better.
Even a filmmaker?
Even a filmmaker.
Even a filmmaker.
But it's part of it is to say, this is part of your history. This is part, these guys went out and did extraordinary things. And again, it's that story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That's what a real hero is.
I'm excited about the notion that people with new technology can begin to tell stories that perhaps they couldn't tell before for lack of a way to do it.
Yeah, well, again, the biggest problem with Red Tails ultimately was that it was 3 movies. Mm-hmm. And just to squeeze into 2 hours all the information, all the stories, everything, was impossible. And the one thing a filmmaker has to do is say, well, I can only tell 2 hours of this. That's all I have available to me at this point. So I'm going to go for the 2 hours that I think will get the widest audience. And I want to make a movie. What I wanted to do was make a movie that was an action thriller, exciting, but had all the undertones of all the other issues that were going on, but basically about pilots, people who love to fly, and the problems they had in terms of the challenges they faced every day, just in terms of going up in those airplanes and doing combat. There was a whole other one about how they got there in the first place, and there was another one later on about how they came back and basically started the civil rights movement. Those are also great movies and great issues.
To be told
be told by somebody. Mm-hmm. And my hope was that by telling this one, mm-hmm. somebody else would come out and say, well, I'm going to make a sequel to that. Mm-hmm. I want to tell that story too. And I keep telling people the best stories have yet to come. And they're not as complicated or expensive as the one I told. I couldn't, without technology, I couldn't have told the story. You can't do a combat movie like that about aerial combat with airplanes. It just is impossible. People have tried Battle of Britain and things, and people get killed, and the shots aren't quite right because it's just physically, to try to coordinate airplanes to get into a position to be able to shoot them a particular way that you need is extremely difficult.
Was it a nightmare, some of it?
Not for us, because we did it all digitally, so we could
make it happen.
We could put the planes wherever we wanted them and have them fly, and there was no danger of anybody getting killed. Mm-hmm. But just, in the end, taking an airplane off and flying it around for 8 hours and have the crews and the guns and all the things you need to do that, it's very, very complicated and expensive.
So what do you think about this notion, though, that I'm going to do the best I can with a film, mm-hmm. and it's up to you to make corrections or take it to the next step? Is that how you see life?
What, in terms of, well, I feel very strongly that information is very important.
Yes.
That knowledge is very important. And giving people knowledge, giving them information, especially for the next generation, is very powerful to them. Mm-hmm. And if you can present it in a very entertaining and exciting way that moves you emotionally, then that's the best of all.
But have you always seen your role, folks like you, as that?
Well, I like to make entertaining movies, but I like to make them about something. And all of my films are about something. They have themes, and they're about issues. And when I started out and I was in college and everything, the films had a tendency to be a little depressing and bitter, and the way it is when you're in college, when you realize the world isn't the way you were told it was. And it wasn't until later that I realized that sort of inspirational movies actually have much more of an effect on people. And, it just has the audience and the kids that come up to you and the people that talk to you and say, you changed my life and you did this, don't happen in movies that say we live in a terrible world. They only happen in movies where you say, yes, we live in a terrible world, but we can actually do something about it.
Do you think, and there it is, do you believe that in the future there may be more collaborative kinds of projects that involve film and live and? Well, the theater is using film now.
And so, there's a lot of things that are crossing over. The thing that's the most important now, obviously, is digital and the digital medium. And that's the thing, with a film like Red Tails, which is so exciting, which is it's now out on DVD, but pretty soon, it will be, you can get it on your iPhone, you can get it, on your laptop, you can put it in your library, you can, it's much easier to do those things than it was before.
Will you allow a company will you license a company to divide it up in a way that it can be shown to the 500, to the populations of India and Africa on their...
No, that'll definitely be happening. And we've been promoting very strongly to encourage corporations and people to either like donate a DVD to a school, and we put a lot of DVDs in schools ourselves, but also once it gets online to help schools have availability of that.
This is fascinating, and I believe that you may have turned a corner. Yes, my people are telling me to, you know how they do.
Funny, they always do that.
Well, but it seems like there's a corner turned where it is not, I know it's not just performance and film for film's sake. I know there's always a deeper thing, but it seems like you may be going a different direction now. I don't know if you can.
Well, it's in terms of what, having a message or?
No, going back to whatever your mindset was prior to 4 years ago.
Well, I mean, the Red Tails is the last of my movies that, again, I've been working on for 20 years. So it's the last of a set of movies that I've been working on for a long, long time. And so I'm very proud that I finished it because I finished everything I started.
Good.
And so in terms of, and it was successful, and it's influenced a lot of people, and I think it will continue in the future.
Yeah. But where are you going next?
Well, now I'm basically retiring, so I'm going back to doing the kind of movies that I used to do when I was in film school. I'm sort of experimenting with the medium now and seeing what you can do in the medium in terms of telling stories and the way you go about it. It's kind of esoteric, and I doubt if anybody will ever see the movies, but it's an interesting, there may be some interesting insights that are gained.
Okay, and are any of these going to be 5-10 minute kinds of things that can play on these handhelds? And
I am not sure. I'm more of a long form person, so I don't know whether I can switch over to something short. I have a tendency to go for the movie, the 2-hour movie, but sometimes I'm tempted by going to television where you can have 5 or 8 hours or 10 hours or even longer. I'm more fascinated with that.
I understand. George Lucas, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Just get a couple shots. I saw you guys earlier. I don't know, is this your wife?
Huh?
Is this your wife? I mean, I don't know. I saw you earlier. I don't know if you're married or something. I saw you guys walking. I didn't see you, I saw her.
Oh. Everybody, yeah.
That's what he wanted to say.
It's true.